The biggest set for Union Arena is right around the corner. In just a few short days, NIKKE is finally going to be joining us in Union Arena, and I expect a ton of new players to be checking out the game because of this set. So whether you're a new player or somebody who's been playing Union Arena for a while and just wants to know what to look forward to, in today's video, we're going to be covering the 6 different lists that you need to know so you can dive in with this set and start playing at your locals today. So with that out of the way, let's dive right in. So up first, I do want to mention that we got some new goodies to share, right? So for those that will be attending Bandai Card Games Fest Vegas, there is this beautiful supply set that is new that has 3 total APs and this map that you can pick up. I know that some people might have already gotten this from some of the other regions that had it and maybe bought online or otherwise, but also what's really exciting is these that are going to be brand new box toppers joining us. So we have even more ways to bling out our deck and get those shiny cards that we've really been looking forward to. One of the things that I'm always asking for, always hoping that we get a couple more full art cards to really max out our decks. So this is a really nice addition for the box toppers that has a ton of playable cards to look forward to. So with that out of the way, let's dive right in. And yes, we are going to be talking about Pilgrim first because, well, spoiler, I am a little bit of a Pilgrim fan for the time that I get to play NIKKE from time to time. Especially I'd like to dive in during the anniversary because tons of free pulls and whatnot. But we have the Rapunzel and Modernia deck. Now, this one is going to be all focus around just emptying out your hand and getting a bunch of additional effects. What's really nice with Rapunzel in particular is that you are able to get some cards back when played. So if you have like a key raid piece that you want to maybe get back or a combo piece that you're missing, Rapunzel is a really great enabler for this strategy. But what's also really important is the when attacking ability that if you have no cards, you can rest something on your opponent's board of 2k or less. And as that Modernia that we just saw was kind of hinting at, we actually do have multiple ways in this deck as well to reduce the BP cost, either for those type of combos like Modernia, as I mentioned, if you just want straight removal, or if you are just trying to get through with a couple extra attacks and you just need to remove 1 or 2 blockers, right? Sometimes just having a minus 1000 BP effect can be really nice in lining that together. Now, I will say one of the downsides or the difficult parts in playing this deck is that it constantly wants you to be at a lower hand count or at 0 most of the times. And we do have this one version of Rapunzel, which is the combo enabler, right? For when you have the Scarlet, the 3 energy version to combo off, but it can be a little bit difficult to kind of string these combos together and really see all of those extra effects come online. So I do want to give a shout out to the event card here that I know gets overlooked most of the time, but Pilgrims, that at the end of the attack phase this turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you do, place 1 card from your hand into your sideline. As you're kind of constantly filtering out your turns and spending a lot, right, to reduce your hand size, having an event card that can catch you up in this way is really important to have, and it's also an active trigger, which is really nice. Now, the last thing that I do want to mention here that is just, well, a good card in general that is going to be used in both purple decks ultimately is the 5/2 split Scarlet here in the bottom left that basically just says, hey, I'm a 5k double attacker that's also going to get to draw a card. So anytime that we have something that can say draw a card in a deck that is very limited on its hand size is, well, welcomed, but then also it's really important to note here that it does give you a option for just getting up to 5k, which is really nice, and making sure that you have a very aggressive target. Now, it being a 2 AP can be a little bit of a downside where you're going to want your encounter, which is your final card, to restand an action point, but because it enters the field active and because it is so strong in what it can be doing, this is definitely one of the better, I would say, double AP cards in the game for what we normally see, that it is also not just a draw engine like we saw with like the Kurama, right, from Yu Yu Hakusho, but it is also very aggressive in what it wants to be doing. So if you like more of the heavy discard hand style for some type of value, then I would recommend checking out the Rapunzel and Moderna combo because it is just really exciting to see these combos come online. Now, moving on from there, and maybe the more popular version of just, well, it's Doro, right? Dorothy and Haran that we have joining us from the Eden site in particular, that this is the, well, I have no triggers. And this one is nice in that you'll notice there is kind of a key theme through the NIKKE set that we are either missing the extra removal on our raid targets, or we're missing the impact. And while this deck does have both, it does come at the drawback of not having either the draw triggers or the other active triggers that we'd normally like to see in these style of decks, because your payoff otherwise is Eden, that on your turn, if you have a card that goes from life to your sideline, if it doesn't have a trigger on it, you can use Eden to then place that card into your hand. So it becomes a kind of secondary draw engine in that regard. But as we have seen here with Dorothy on the screen herself as the kind of namesake for this deck, and also having the no trigger condition, we want to have cards that remove our opponent's threats, and she's really great at that, but again, does come with the very heavy cost of not having any cards with trigger on them. Now, I will say the other raid that we get to play, and again, it does have that similar condition of 4 more cards without trigger, which as you're playing this normally, it's not that hard to ultimately get, right? But it does have that impact, which is really important for us, but also gives us additional filtering. So we don't have maybe as much direct draw as we would like, but there are a couple of additional pieces here that allow us to find the combos that we're looking for, or just draw through enough of our deck to hopefully find the Eden to really bring the draw engine online. Or again, as it's kind of just here in the corner once more, is Scarlet is just so good, right? So Scarlet is kind of the great equalizer, I feel like, in purple for this set. I would not run less than 2 in any purple deck, period. Probably 3 is correct, but I'm going to be so honest, just for how much that this set needs the extra draw and aggressive attackers at the top end. There are some worlds where I would very much recommend 4 even, just because some of the other late game options we do have are just a little bit lackluster in that regard. Now, again, I will say that we also have the 4 energy Dorothy here that I have to mention, is that when a trigger ability is placed from your life area into your sideline, you also get to draw a card that way. So this is definitely going to feel a very different style of deck for Union Arena veterans, where you just accept that you're not going to get any help out of your life for the various effects, unless it's a special, which, of course, as we all know, is one of the best ones to hit anyways. But you do have like this interesting mix of Dorothy and Eden effects that draw you a bunch of extra cards to make sure you can find those combo pieces. So if you are someone who wants to see the game play out in a little different way, but still have important removal in the 5 energy Dorothy, as well as impact to helpfully close out games with the Haran, then you can definitely check out this other Pilgrim deck. Now, moving into yellow, and honestly, my favorite deck from the set in general is going to be the Modernia, and this is all around the memory mechanic, and of course, the Marian that is going to be the partner in this case. So for this deck, it is a much more yellow event heavy style. You'll notice that we are running a full 12, which for those who are unfamiliar with Union Arena, you are generally going to run 4 of your final triggers and 4 of whichever special that you want to rely on. And it's quite rare that we do see anything beyond that, because the event cards generally don't stack up as well. However, with memory not only being key for Modernia, when you get them back, 2, you want to discard a bunch of cards, it's also just a very good free draw effect that you get. So for yellow, we actually have quite a bit of drawing and filtering. We have some really good raid targets as well. And then with Modernia, just getting the access of the extra removal, as long as we are burning cards for the effect to increase the amount. This definitely feels like the most complete, in my opinion, NIKKE deck that we do get out of this set. Now, the Rapi is also really important because it does care about, extra drawing and extra filtering. And then we also have the Anise here that allows you to draw extra cards that way too. And Neon, which is not a raid, but is still worth, calling out here, is that if you've played an event card this turn, it becomes damage 2, which is very, very important for pushing damage. One thing that you always want to be looking for, impact is always going to be better, but damage 2 is another great way at applying a lot of pressure. And it's also worth noting here that it is the color trigger for this deck. So it's always nice to have a yellow color trigger that is also just something that we want to jam 4 of. So it does come around quite nicely in that regard of just giving us another 4K attacker that is really great at what it wants to be doing, if we're being honest. But for this deck, it is going to be one that you truly have to know how many cards of each event you have left in your deck, how many have you seen already, can I afford to go in a turn from Modernia into my next turn and loop those memory cards, or do I just need to use them to draw and hopefully fill our hand back up into finding those other combo pieces? So this one is a interesting hybrid, I would almost say, for again those that are more familiar with Union Arena. It's not as all in on a event heavy style of deck as we've maybe seen with like Hellish Blizzard out of One Punch Man, but it does heavily still use the events for value, but just has some really good impactors and damage to units that you can otherwise rely on. That it just is definitely like a nice to have to help rounding out the deck. And then of course, if you are able to get the extra removal, all the better. So this deck definitely does feel like it has the most complete package, gives you a lot of extra draw, gives you a lot of extra filtering, and also has a very robust raid lineup that honestly covers a lot of ground. So if you are someone who likes to have more of the spell slinging style for value and drawing a bunch of cards into your big payoffs, then definitely check out the Modernia. Now moving on from there, we have the Rapi deck by itself, so just the memory package removed. And one thing I do want to note here is that as you're opening up product, you might note that I had left off the exotic archetype or Crow and some of the other characters because it just didn't feel like it was good enough to include in these lists. The BP threshold did hold it back a little bit too much in my opinion, where if I was someone who didn't want to rely on the Modernia side, I want to cut out the events because I just want more raid targets, then honestly, you can just do some cool stuff with Rapi in general, and then also having Uni as your other raid target just being a good 4K attacker, and can also do some cheeky swap things from your front line to your energy line in case you need to do that for a variety of reasons. But this is one that I would recommend to check out if you just want a much more straightforward and aggressive. And then what's really important too is that this one actually allows you to get a extra attack in. So for this one, it is a bit limited that you do have to have 4 event cards. So the bigger Rapi here on the left-hand side, this is more about like your final turn. You're really just trying to get in 5 attacks. Maybe you hit the color trigger off Neon and finally got that one piece that you were missing. Rapi just comes out of nowhere, gives you the double attack, and can very quickly close out a game. So it does still have the event card matter feel to it, but as you're going through the game, as you're getting your finals and your specials, and you're just kind of progressing the game normally, you will find a way that you are just looking for, oh, I naturally have 4 in there, now I can play my Rapi to get the extra attack in, right? And then the other really nice thing to note about Uni here, right, is her 2 energy variant. Choose up to 1 character with 3,000 or less BP on your opponent's front line and switch it to resting. This is just a great aggressive removal option that we have just in terms of getting an extra damage, right? It's not going to completely remove the card, but having a really nice early play that allows us to get in an extra chip damage and then allows us to go into a 4K raid, which again is just the sake that it's a 4K, you're happy to attack. That is the break point in this game. 4K attackers are very, very good. It's nice. So having that early energy generation, then going into a free point of damage and then going into a 4K attack is honestly what you would like to see from a more complete raid line like this. So this deck, again, is much more aggressive in that regard, and you also have the double attacker at the end. So if you are wanting to play something that's a little bit more straightforward, definitely check out the more, I would say, all-in, right, counter style of deck. Now, maybe the all-star for a lot of people, or at least for green, I will say, coming out of this set is Alice. This deck is interesting in that it is all about just putting extra cards onto the battlefield, being aggressive with them. And if I recall correctly, this is one of the earliest versions we've seen of the card tucking ability in Japan's Union Arena that gain a additional effect for either burning that card, putting the card under, or spending it in some way later, right? So Noir and Blanc actually are kind of the centerpieces of this deck overall, and just in terms of having that effect, making sure that they're on the front line, getting the value, and then having a way to boost your entire team. Now, what's really nice too is that we have Rupi here as we just talk about multiple attacks, and while she is a 3,500 herself, as I had mentioned, if we have Noir and we're going to use the effect, we're buffing our entire board. The way that this works out is that you get to have a very aggressive setup that, yes, they are all generally 3,500 attackers that then all get boosted by Noir. You actually get a restand off the Rupee, and while they don't have impact or damage to, other than this one very notable instance of Alice, right? You are just trying to get these attacks early to close out the game. Now, you can use these special as well to give yourself impact, which is important. But generally speaking, having removal focus specials has been better in Union Arena. So whenever we have one of these like alternate mode ones, it's just, while it's nice to close out the game, and if the deck is aggressive enough, it's welcome, but generally there's a problematic unit that you want to remove. So this deck is going to be extremely light in the removal department, and instead is just all about being aggressive, getting the attacks in, and clearing the way. Now, the other thing that you will notice in this list in particular is that we don't have a second raid target. So really it comes back to Rupee being able to go the distance for us and making sure that when we play one of those other 3 energy characters, right, we're able to restand them right away, be aggressive, and get the attack in. So again, maybe the one downside I will say for this deck in particular is that you are extremely reliant on Noir and Blanc in this case in particular, and because Noir has to be on the front line, she very quickly becomes just a thunderbolt of removal that your opponent might have. Now, again, Alice is so great that she can help find some of those pieces again and making sure that you always have your combo pieces. And we also have Lumilia, which is going to give you the extra draw, right, when played. So there are a couple extra ways that we either getting searching effects or we're looking at the top card of our decks to hopefully find the right pieces, but it is going to feel really bad if you don't have the Noir to bring it all online. But otherwise, this is a very aggressive green style of deck that if you just love Alice and you want to be aggressive with Noir and Blanc, then definitely look forward to this one. However, if you want something a little bit spicier, and maybe if you love green in Union Arena, I would actually recommend going with the Tetra and Missilus hybrid version, which is going to have Laplace at the center. But really, I want to stress that the Liter card, which is always just the best support early on in NIKKE, right, also just happens to be one of the best support cards here in Union Arena because it gives you that extra filtering. But what's important to note here is that Laplace themselves are going to be able to gain the damage too, and then also give the energy line disruption. So choose up to one character on your opponent's front line and move it into their energy line. So it's going to apply extra pressure, make your opponent have bad blocks, and then if we have the more aggressive pressure from Alice like the turn before and giving us extra attackers, you know, that one removal from Laplace can actually be really, really important. And if their energy line is full, especially if they are more of like a go big green style of deck where they need to go up to 7 or 8 energy, then it just becomes extra removal. This becomes double removal into some matchups, which again is quite good as you can imagine. And then last but not least, we do actually have to give a shout out to Drake as well, because we do have a bunch of 4K matters style of cards. So just getting to do a little bit of extra searching when attacking, finding those combo pieces is very, very welcomed. And then lastly, just a 2-of for Maxwell here, doing their best Scarlet impression to make the call out from earlier in the video, is that sometimes it's just really nice to have a 2 action point that can come into play, be active, be aggressive for you. But there really wasn't anything else that kind of fit into this, and you want to make sure that you have enough 4K attackers to, well, be aggressive with. So a 2-of Maxwell is absolutely fine. You know, if you want to go into like an extra copy of Soda and Guilty just to try to balance out your curve a little bit, I would definitely, you know, feel free to do that. But the last one I want to give a call out here too really quickly is Julia, because we do actually have a way to start buffing our units. So one of the better plays that we can actually do if we don't need a 5K attacker, right, is Julia becomes such an insane threat. So because it's a double energy, I know there can be a lot of hesitation to promoting her, right? But we do have other double energies we can keep on our back line. But the way this works is that Julia will be like an early energy provider that you eventually push up. You can combo it with your key support card to give it plus 1000 BP. And then it basically will say every turn, hey, if you don't block me, I am drawing a card. So either you're losing a card or I'm drawing a card. So for a character that just does not have a lot of text or just does not have any flair or anything behind it, it's surprisingly a good card and can apply a lot of pressure that your opponent is going to have to deal with. And saying, again, 4K being the breakpoint, it can be pretty nasty to deal with. So if you're trying to build a green deck, this is definitely the variant that I would, lean into a little bit more. Coming into Union Arena, I expect a lot of people will just be like, and myself included, right? Like, I want to play a Pilgrim deck because that's the characters, that I like. So I would not be surprised if people just gravitate towards whichever faction is their favorite. But if you want to feel something that is a little bit more complete while you're playing it, then I would definitely recommend, trying to find the best pieces for both Tetra and Missilus and combining them together for one complete experience. So last but not least, of course, we got to get a tier list here at the end, and my big head is almost blocking it. But yes, I do have to say here at the very end that NIKKE was a set that was released, much, much earlier in the Japan format. It's actually getting another mini set worth of support. And so while I do think Modernia is the best overall, and, maybe I should have put it in the heart of the cards territory, because again, it's very, very good. You have the extra draw, you have the extra removal. The only downside is that you have to see the exact pieces to bring it all together. So maybe it deserves a spot into the heart of the cards, but from an overall standpoint, I will say that this set does leave a little bit to be desired when compared against the more recent releases of Union Arena, but it is still a A-OK deck to go play at your locals and just have fun with. So if you are a new player to Union Arena, if you have any questions at all, please let me know down in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer them. But otherwise, I would definitely encourage to download the Bandai TCG Plus app, find a locals near you, and honestly just have fun because the 1-year anniversary is going on for the game. There's a ton of great promos to collect at your locals. And again, it's just a fun game to play. So I do hope that others will check it out and go support their local game store. But with that, that is all for today's video. So until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.